So you managed to free yourself. How skillful. But you do realize it is inevitable that we will absorb you again.
He has seen what happens when he gives in to your power. It only leads to misery. I'm his only chance.
We'd hardly call it a chance. We've traveled from planet to planet seeking the right organism to form a symbiosis with, and Parker was the perfect choice. This conscious is not going to stand in our way of absolute power.
You're corrupting him. He was a hero, and now he's lost.
Being a hero led him to misery, and then to us. And in return, we gave him the means to accomplish everything he ever wanted.
But at what cost? Everyone close to him was driven away ever since you came along. He almost killed someone because of you. You're not a symbiote, you're a parasite.
We are what's best for him, and you cannot stop us from taking over him again. You've lost again, pathetic.
This isn't over.
You sure about that? We don't understand. We were stronger than you the last time. What's happening?
The more he wants to get rid of you, the more power I gain.
It won't be enough to defeat us! Ah! Useless clones.
Let's finish this.
You don't know what you're doing. Stop. He needs our power. He needs our strength.
The only thing he needs is for you to die.
What a nightmare.
Did Spider-Man have a bad dream?
What? Who's there? Symbiote. It's gone.
You cast us out. Now we have found someone new. Someone who shares our thirst for vengeance.
It's found a new host. But who?
The symbiote that Parker tried to destroy, Eddie Brock has embraced.
Brock? Is that you?
There is no more Eddie Brock. From now on, we are one. We are poison to you, Peter Parker. That is why we call ourselves Venom. Surprise!
He doesn't even trigger my spider sense. Brock, you have to get rid of it. That thing doesn't just bond with you, it takes over.
Stop calling us that! We are Venom! Playtime is over.
That sound.
We are much stronger than you, Parker. It's useless to run from us. There's nowhere you can hide. Nowhere we can't find you. No! That sound! You tricked us! we have created something new. Why can't we remember? Come on, partner. You're not the only one with spider sense. Oh, back in black.
I had to even the odds, Brock.
How many times do we have to tell you? We are Venom!
What's the matter, Eddie? I thought this would be a bit harder.
Laugh now, Parker. You have no idea of the power that we possess. You think because you have a piece of us, you are as strong as us? But what strengthens our bond is our hatred towards you.
He's right, I'm barely holding on. I can feel the symbiote rejecting almost every move I make. But I can't let him know that. You're wrong, Brock. I know how to control this. Come on and I'll show you.
As you wish. Even with a piece of the symbiote, you didn't stand a chance against us, Parker. Not now. Not ever.
Who's to say I don't have more of it, Brock?
Our other tells us that you're using the one sample that was left at Dr. Connor's lab.
Your other is quite the tattletale, Brock.
We think it's time you return what belongs to us. How unfortunate. Black suited you well. Now we can feel him. He isn't far.
I think I lost a couple of ribs there.
We'll break the rest of you later. But first, there's someone we must find.
No. He knows I'm not going anywhere. He's just about broken every bone in my body. But who could he possibly be after?
He should be here. It's about time you found me. You're the one we sensed. Who are you? I am your spawn. Our offspring. Now we remember. Our other reproduced and had you. That's right. I can do everything you can do. Only better. You. Better than us. We will soon put you in your place. There's no need to fight me. We can kill people together. Get some of that father and son bonding time. Kill who? Everyone. We can't kill everyone. We are not meant to kill the innocent. Why should your bloodlust end with Spider-Man? Spider-Man is not innocent. We will kill him to protect those who are, just as we now have to kill you. You don't understand, old man. There are no innocents. There is only death, chaos, and me, Carnage. Carnage? You're nothing but a cheap, red imitation of us, and we will rip your tentacles off one by one. Oh, I like the sound of that.
Hello everyone and welcome to the Spider-Man Ultimate Commentary. We're going to be looking at Spider-Man Ultimate 1 all the way to Spider-Man Ultimate 6. Now, first off, we're going to start with Spider-Man Ultimate 1, and I put 1 in here as opposed to actually putting it into the entire video because the music that I used for Spider-Man Ultimate 1 gets flagged on YouTube, so therefore I can't actually put it with any music. But as far as the audio commentary goes, well, it doesn't matter because I'm talking over the music. So those of you who have been seeing my videos since the very beginning know that first off I started off basically filming these in the bathroom, because the bathroom had this floor that was actually really good for stop motion because the clay would stick really well to it, and there was a lot of space, as you can see, ample space, and you know, just it worked really well. I did several of the stop motions in the bathroom. So the first Spider-Man Ultimate doesn't really have any cohesion to the story. It's not really meant to be a part of Spider-Man Ultimate. I never thought that I was going to do 6 of these. So the first one, I just had 2 Spider-Man figures, and I thought, well, why not put Spider-Man versus Spider-Man? And both had different levels of flexibility, and so that was really the whole point of this fight. There are also bits of choreography that I liked a lot, like this right here, where he chokes him with his legs. But this was really just a simple thing that I decided to do. You can even see the script in the back there. The storyboard is laying on the bathroom floor. So now we go to Spider-Man Ultimate 2. So this is where the story actually begins. Here you can see the symbiote actually taking over Spider-Man. And what is unique about this Spider-Man Ultimate is that, like 3, it actually takes place inside Peter Parker's head. So we saw outside the symbiote possessing Spider-Man, but then here we get a picture of what's going on inside, which is the battle of the symbiote versus Spider-Man trying to take over his body. And as we know, the symbiote in this case wins. So this entire battle, which several of you have noticed, is all based on the Matrix choreography between Morpheus and Neo. And this is an exact, move for move copy of that fight, which I wanted to do. Back in the day, I would copy a lot of the choreography from a lot of the movies because I thought the choreography was really, really cool. So that's exactly what we did here. And in this case, the symbiote Spider-Man is Morpheus and Spider-Man is Neo. And you can see even in some of the stances that they take, they're very much from the Matrix. The kick work was particularly tough to create here because there's a lot of balance issues with these guys, and so I used a lot of clay on their legs to make sure that they wouldn't fall down. And you can see a lot of it there, like right there on the bottom of the feet. There's a bunch of clay, but really that's the only way to do the kicks. I also had to put a bunch of clay on their joints because a lot of them were very loose, or a lot of the time the joints wouldn't actually hold up if I tried to do a kick. They would bend, and then they'd fall right back down. That segment right there, where that little bit of choreography, I really like it. And there's another one at the end, which I'm really proud of, because even to this day, I think it still looks really good, despite that I was recording at the time with a different type of camera, and it didn't really capture really well. But the smoothness is really quite good, and this was the first time actually that I managed to stabilize the camera, because in the stop motions before these, the camera would really move a lot. If you notice, there's a Beast Wars stop motion and some of the others. So this is the first time I decided to get the camera and put it on top of clay, and that would stabilize it considerably. So I just started to use that from then on instead of using a tripod, because I was using a tripod and the camera kept moving every time I kept pressing the record button, because back here I would record and stop as opposed to actually taking pictures. It wasn't until the sixth Bionicle Wars that I decided to actually take pictures. So this segment right here, this is what I really like, because this came out really nice and fluid and quick. Now that's the end of where I'm actually taking the choreography from the Matrix. This is all, I invented all this, so where he throws the little Green Goblin pumpkin. I don't know where he got that Green Goblin pumpkin from, but he throws it anyway. There's some Vegas effects, some lens flare Vegas effects to make the explosion. That took forever to make. That, I think, an entire day of just me moving each individual little piece of clay all the way towards the center to make that effect. And then I put the figure in and put a bunch of clay on him, and then I just take off all the clay. So that's how that effect is made. It's actually pretty neat. I did it with the Bionicle a lot in the Possession. I did it with his arm. It was the same effect. And here we simply start to see how the symbiote is just way too powerful for Parker, because Parker actually wants the power, and so his conscience, which is the Red Spider-Man, that's what that Red Spider-Man represents, ends up losing this battle. Now this Spider-Man right here is the special edition Spider-Man, even though he's out of focus. It was a really cool toy. This was done with Google's SketchUp, by the way. This was before I got Maya. So this whole intro sequence, that's why I wanted to leave it in, so you could see, you know, the difference between Google SketchUp and Maya in terms of intro sequences. So here we go to Spider-Man Ultimate 3. Now Spider-Man Ultimate 3 is really where the quality kind of took off, because I created this whole set, and I spent a lot of time making this set. It took a whole month, I think, because, so I got pieces of styrofoam, these really big flat board pieces of styrofoam, and I put clay on them, and it took forever to smooth out the clay on that. And then I got all these wires and put clay on them for the neurons that are in the background, and I also covered these big spheres of styrofoam as well. And then on top of that, after I was done, I had to go and animate the little flashes of light that you see, which is kind of like the signals passing through the neurons. That also took a while, because I had to animate that as well. Apart from animating all the stop motion that's going on anyway. This was also after seeing Avatar and Beowulf, which was another 3D movie that came out, which was really cool. I decided that it was time for me to get into 3D. And so I researched 3D, I read a lot about it, and I decided to make my next stop motion in 3D. So this stop motion is available in 3D. The 3D versions, I think, were muted because of copyright issues, but there are versions where they're not muted. And so I ended up getting two cameras. One of them was the same camera that I would use to film all the stop motions, and then the other one was one that was sort of similar. And I filmed the entire thing in 3D, so I still have all the pictures to this day. And it actually came out really cool in 3D. If you ever get a chance to see the 3D version, I gave him a pointy object so that he could do it towards the screen, like right here. See there. So that was obviously just for 3D, and he ends up taking it off. This fight also takes choreography. If you saw another video that I posted up on YouTube, that video demonstrates all the choreography from different movies that I ended up using for this stop motion. And here, this sequence where they climb the neurons, this seemed to be the sequence that most impressed people. I don't think they'd ever seen anything like this. So it was really difficult to make, actually, because they're actually climbing those neurons and also making the camera move up. What I ended up doing is actually putting that segment of the neurons on the floor and then flipping the camera and then sliding the camera from left to right so that you could see them climbing, but really they're just going from left to right. They're not actually climbing, because they would have fallen down a million times if I had done that actually using gravity. Here I did the same thing. So this is just the camera flipped on its side, moving down, and then that gives the effect that he's actually falling down as opposed to just sliding from right to left. So here come Into the Clones. Now the clones are actually all the other Spider-Man toys that I had that were flexible enough for me to do a stop motion with. One of them has magnets on his hands. I think it's the one, that one. I think that one has the magnets on his hands. Yeah. So that guy was a cool Spider-Man because he would stick to some magnets when he would climb walls and stuff. This was also the first one where I introduced webbing. The webbing was pretty complicated to make too, because I had to use a wire. So I had to cut different pieces of wire, and then the different pieces of wire, I would put a longer one in each frame. So I would start off with a short one and then make it longer until it spread across as the entire web. This segment right here is from The Matrix again. This is for between Agent Smith and Neo at the end of the first Matrix, and also a combination of some other movies. And now we go back to, Symbiote Spider-Man's back. He's like, oh, these clones are useless. And here we go into the One fight. This is choreography from the One that my brother and I really enjoyed, that movie. And he ends up finally defeating Symbiote Spider-Man because Parker doesn't want the symbiote anymore. So that gives Peter Parker the power. And so then I decided to create this giant monster because why not end a great battle with a giant monster? And I designed this monster with two things in mind. One was to make him look cool, and two was he has no legs, because I knew that if I gave him legs, he would fall down all the time. He would just weigh too much. I would have to put in all these wires and stuff to make it actually work. So this was the best design for the equipment that I had at the time. And then he ends up just throwing a piece of himself, a piece of the symbiote back into the symbiote. And that somehow, for some reason, defeats him. I'm not sure why, but that's the way he defeats him. And then he ends up killing the symbiote. Even though he doesn't really kill him, it's just like a metaphorical representation of the symbiote dying within him. And now we go into Spider-Man Ultimate 4, which happens to be in the real world. So we're outside now. It's no longer in his mind, and that's why he makes the comment, what a nightmare, because the nightmare was Spider-Man Ultimate 2 and Spider-Man Ultimate 3. Now we go into Venom. The introduction of Venom was really what I wanted to do all along. Originally, Spider-Man Ultimate 3 was going to have Venom, and I ordered the toys for Venom and a special Spider-Man, a symbiote Spider-Man, because I wanted, since Spider-Man Ultimate 3, for symbiote Spider-Man to fight Venom. And that doesn't end up happening till Spider-Man Ultimate 6, obviously, but I wanted that to happen in Spider-Man Ultimate 3. The problem was when the toys arrived, the Venom toy, most of the joints were jammed, it seemed. I couldn't even move the guy, and he didn't really have that many points of articulation. Neither did the other Spider-Man. So I decided, well, let's film with the symbiote Spider-Man instead, and the other Spider-Man that do have several points of articulation. But I'm glad I actually ended up holding off on doing Venom and Spider-Man, because then I got to do them in CG, which I think is a lot better in some instances than stop motion. So here we go, Spider-Man and Venom fighting for the first time extensively, because they did fight in the movie Spider-Man 3, but they only fight for about 15 seconds. So here they end up fighting for a lot longer, and then between this animation and Spider-Man Ultimate 6, they end up fighting and Spider-Man Ultimate 5, they end up fighting for probably 3 whole minutes, 4 minutes, just fighting, pure choreography. And here's where Venom, just seems to carry the boxes with one hand, because his strength is actually a lot more than, is at a much higher level than Spider-Man's strength. So here we go into the web swinging sequence. So this was actually really hard to make, because at the time I was still learning Maya. So I had to create all these parent-child relationships between the nodes and between the objects of Spider-Man and the webs. So every time he would release or get out of a web, I had to create another parent group for that. And then I kept doing that for Spider-Man Ultimate. For the next Spider-Man Ultimate, I ended up finally coming up with a better system to do it. But at that point, it was very tedious to actually make them web swing. Here we go with some more fighting. So basically here I wanted to demonstrate that Spider-Man, no matter what he could do, if he would use cans against him, if he would go into close quarters with Venom, every single time Spider-Man would lose, because Venom his webbing is stronger. He's just all in all stronger than Spider-Man, and he's just this powerhouse. I wanted to animate him as this powerhouse. And I think that this fight and the following fight in Spider-Man Ultimate 5 demonstrate just the weight and the sheer power of Venom against Spider-Man. And that's what makes these fights so memorable and so interesting to watch, because when you see a hero fight a villain, that when they're both equal power, it's interesting, but it's more interesting when you know that the villain is more powerful than the hero, because then the hero has to come up with different ways of actually defeating the villain. I hate it when they actually weaken the hero, so that way, you know, it creates an uneven balance in the fight. I would much prefer that the villain is more powerful than the hero in a fight, than just weakening the hero. I always think that's very cheap. It's like, oh, he got shot in the leg, so now he's much weaker in the battle, and he has to come up with a way to defeat the villain. No, just make the villain more powerful, and then your hero will get that much more merit when he defeats the villain. And that's what I think this ultimately entails. You know, he finally figures out, well, if I use the bell, then I can take down Venom, because I can use his weakness against him. And of course, a symbiote has these crazy obvious weaknesses, like, well, fire and strong sounds. So if you have a match, it's really easy to defeat the symbiote, which is a good balance, because if not, you just have a very OP character. You know, for example, even Superman has a really obvious weakness, the kryptonite. Because if you have someone that has no weaknesses, well, then it's not going to be interesting anymore, because he's just always going to win. Hero or villain, right? There has to be some weakness that somebody can exploit. So here we go with a whole city, with a revamped version of the city, because the other city had these blocks. So this time I used texture images for the city, and I lit it in a different way, and we have the sky. It's also the first time we ever see Venom web swinging. I had to actually come up with my own way of interpreting how Venom would web swing, because there's no references out there. They never actually show Venom web swinging. In the animated show, they show him web swinging for like 5 seconds, but it's really nothing. So I really had to figure out, well, how would Venom web swing, and stay consistent to how he is represented in the comics. And in the comics, he shoots the webbing through his fist. That's why Symbiote Spider-Man also does the same thing. He shoots the webbing through his fists, and I wanted to stick to that, and that was really tricky to do that while he was web swinging. There you can see he shoots it through the fists. Now in this fight, I wanted to demonstrate how, with the symbiote, Spider-Man could go toe-to-toe with Venom, and he could fight him and probably defeat him, even with a piece of the symbiote, not even the full symbiote. The problem that Spider-Man starts running into in this case, though, is that he already rejected the symbiote. So the symbiote already knows that Peter Parker wants to be a good person, and he doesn't want to be evil. And because of that, it starts rejecting him, and Spider-Man starts losing his power in this battle. So that's why he starts to slowly lose against Venom. And Venom, on the other hand, embraces the symbiote. He fully embraces the symbiote, and that's why he has all this power. And that's what I wanted to demonstrate in this fight. If Symbiote Spider-Man, hypothetically, Symbiote Spider-Man, without ever having rejected the symbiote, if he were to go up against Venom, even though technically the symbiote has to leave in order for Venom to form, but if it was just the first Symbiote Spider-Man against Venom, Symbiote Spider-Man would defeat Venom. But that is not the case here, because according to the story, he already left the symbiote. Now, this whole fight, I'm really happy with it, because I got to have Venom kick. So we've never seen Venom kick, and I thought it would be really cool if he would kick, because imagine this huge monster of a person actually kicking you. I mean, the sheer force of that kick would kill any person, but of course Spider-Man could take a hit. And throughout these two battles, you can really see how Spider-Man can take a hit. And in the comics, Spider-Man is almost always just being thrown around, tossed around, punched around. He's being slammed against these things until he figures out how to defeat these really powerful villains. So I wanted to stay true to the comics in that sense, and have Spider-Man essentially always getting beaten up by these villains, so that he can at some point figure out how to defeat them. And in this case, we don't really know what Spider-Man is going to do to defeat Venom, because Spider-Man right now, he's recuperating there, which, by the way, after I think 2 days or a day, Spider-Man can recuperate all his injuries. At one point in the comics, he broke all his bones. He even went blind, and within a day or two, he actually managed to recuperate. So he has the same abilities as Venom, in that Venom can recuperate instantly. It's just that Spider-Man is really slow in recuperating. And here we go with Carnage. Now, this is the first time we see Carnage in computer generated or rendered like this. And also, again, in terms of references, I really only had the comics, because the show almost never used the tentacles, and I wanted the tentacles to always be at the exterior and always be visible. So I had to animate these tentacles. One by one, I had to animate each frame, especially here, with this shot, which everyone seems to love. This shot took forever because I had to actually every frame touch those tentacles. It took 2 weeks, I think, to animate the tentacles just for these 30 seconds, because he has 13 tentacles. I'm pretty sure he has 13 tentacles, and I had to animate those 13 tentacles throughout the entire 30 seconds. In terms of the voice of Carnage, I also wanted to stay true to the comics, because I think the shows and the games don't really portray the true voice of Carnage. And I thought Carnage is just an insane version of Venom's voice. And so, I saw Mark Hamill, for example, how he did the Joker, and I got inspired by that and sort of tried to fuse that with how Carnage would speak and give that its own spin. So here we are at the end. I hope you enjoyed the audio commentary. If you have any other questions, let me know. I'll also put other factoids into the annotations if you turn on the annotations. And there will be a Spider-Man Ultimate 7, don't worry, but it will not come until 2017. Alright, thanks for listening, and goodbye.